Hey there, CPO here, and in this video I'm going to install a Barricade 9500 lb synthetic wireless winch on my 2015 JKU, and I'm going to put it on a Barricade Trail Force HD bumper. So it comes with this aluminum fairlead, obviously because it's synthetic, fairly standard wired controller. My model also comes with a wireless controller. It's got an on-off switch, and then of course the in-out buttons. And then it's battery powered, of course. And it's the only thing I don't like is it's got this non-standard battery. I wish it came with like a AA or AAA, but it is what it is. It comes with a hook, a safety strap, and everything you need to mount and then wire the winch. It does come with a user manual, but hey, I'm here to help you decipher that. So getting started, we're going to mount the control box on top of the winch. Now I'm going to do this sort of the standard configuration. So there are probably other ways to do this, but this is fairly typical. And there are 3 connections that need to happen on the top of the winch, and then that doesn't include the ground, which you're going to see on the bottom. But basically what you're looking for is the black, yellow, and red connections to the motor for the winch. And each time we do this, it's going to be a washer, then a lock washer, then the nut. And of course, once you get these tightened down, you can slip these little covers over to protect those connections. Now I'm doing all of this on the table instead of doing it on the Jeep or on the bumper. Why? Well, because it's easier. I can do it right here without space limitations or constraints. So I see a lot of people try and wire the entire thing after mounting it. Now there is this thin black ground cable that I've seen a lot of people incorrectly attach to the black post, the ground post on top for the motor. It actually needs to go to the casing of the winch with the ground for the battery. So make sure you connect that thin black wire with the thicker battery ground. And there we go. We've got the positive and the negative for connection to the vehicle. And that's it. Now, this wireless model, I do have this little green antenna. In order to keep it from getting all tied up in anything, I'm going to tape it right here to the side. I actually couldn't find my black tape for this video, so I'm using Scotch tape, but I'm going to change that out for some electrical tape, and that's what I'll do in the mounted location. The last thing I want to do before I move it to the vehicle is I'm going to put a zip tie right here to sort of tidy up these wires, keep that thin ground wire from getting hung up again in the winch rope, and just keep everything tidy. So I think I'm going to mount this bad boy right here. I mean, the bumper's designed for it at all, 4 mounting holes and everything. But there is a challenge here if you do this with the bumper already on. So it's not a super big deal, but there's a plastic sort of a shroud that if you left it on, which I left mine on because I think it looks cleaner that way, you can see these 2 holes are on top of that plastic shroud, which means in order to install the winch, to get the bolts up through the bottom, you're going to need to drill a hole through here. But not only just a hole big enough for the bolt, a hole big enough for the bolt head, so that when you tighten it down, you're not tightening down and compressing the shroud. So that's the consideration here. A lot of people do it this way. If you've already got a bumper on, fine. Quite frankly, this Barricade Trail Force HD bumper is so easy to take on and off. I'm just going to pull it off real quick, mount the winch, and then put the whole bumper assembly back together. Now obviously if you buy the bumper and the winch at the same time, this is easy. I mounted the bumper first so I could do a video on how I did that, and now I'm going to do a separate video on the winch. So I'm going to pull the bumper, put the winch on, and then do it that way. However, if you do decide to go ahead and mount your winch on an already mounted bumper, go ahead and make all your connections ahead of time. There's no reason to have to do all this in the confines of a bumper and a grill. Make all these connections so basically all you have to worry about is the ground and the power off the winch. All right, so you'll need these 4 sets of nuts and bolts, the ones with the square ends. And basically, what's going to happen is these square nuts are going to slip in to these holes, and then from underneath, you're going to screw into them. Okay, now you're going to set this right there. Now it's at a little bit of an angle because of where the bumper naturally sits. I'm just going to lift one corner up till I can find that capture nut, and then I'm going to go to the other side, loosely screw in, and then these two should be pretty well indexed. There we go. Make sure all of the wires are where I need them to be, aka out the back, not trapped anywhere. Just going to take a look at the front. Make sure that all looks good. All right. Let's do things out of the way. These are 17 millimeter. I know it's silly, but the good thing about putting this on with the bumper off and leaving that little plastic fairing untouched is when I remount the bumper, these 2 bolts are going to be hidden by the fairing, which is a little bit, I'll call it security by obscurity. But anybody looking to just walk away with my winch is going to need more than just a 17 millimeter ratchet and a little bit of flexibility. They're going to have to figure out how to get to these 2 bolts, which are not going to be readily accessible. Once I have everything lined up, holding it with one hand still, I'm just going to reach up here and get one of my nuts started on each side of the bumper to keep it from sliding off. Don't worry, I'm going to go back and properly assemble the bumper. But this isn't a bumper install video, it's a winch install video. So I'll get that done and I'll come back to you and we'll talk about the winch. So since we've done all the wiring on the winch itself, the only thing we have left to do now is attach the wires to the battery and put on the fairlead and the hook. So you're just going to make sure you run your cable out the bottom of the winch through the hole here, and then we've got some Allen wrenches, heads, and in hindsight this might have been easier to do without the winch, but we'll manage. Alright, 17 millimeter wrench and an 8 millimeter hex. You just want to make sure you get it so that there's no bumper protruding past where the fairlead is, because you don't want your synthetic rope to be running along the bumper instead of the fairlead. Alright. Now we can put our hook on. That part is done. So listen, when it comes to running the power for your winch, There's a couple of ways to do it. You can do it the way the manual calls out, and the way, quite frankly, most people do it, and that's connect your positive and negative leads directly to the battery. There are some people who don't want to have constant power for their winch running out the bumper at all times. I'm kind of one of those people. And so I was thinking about adding in either a manual switch, or perhaps an electronic solenoid switch. I know there are several manufacturers who actually sell them for winches specifically. But the reality of it is, I contacted a friend of mine who I trust a lot in this area, and his point was, you want as few things for points of failure as possible with this setup. This is an emergency recovery device, so you don't want to add anything else to the mix that has the potential of failing. And his point is valid. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this directly to the battery, the way the manual describes it and the way most people do it. He did recommend, and this makes sense, next time I do a battery change, to get a GM side post battery so that your winch can have its own posts for connection. That's also a great point. I'm still using the stock battery in this, but if I change batteries, I'll be doing that in the future. Another thing we talked about was about relocating the solenoid inside the engine compartment. And that is possible, even with the JK. But it's not something I wanted to tackle right now. So I did do one thing, I'm doing it now. I did want to do one thing though that makes me feel better, and that is putting a little extra protection around this positive wire that's running to the battery. That's a lot of wire that will be hot with voltage all the time, that I just wanted to make sure was extra protected. So as you can see, I'm just running a wire loom as an extra measure. Not necessary, makes me feel better. So here's my newly protected positive lead, and you can run these to the battery however makes sense to you. But I found running them down through here works well. And then listening to the aid of a coat hanger. Whew, just barely enough room. Alright, so here's a closer look at my connections to the battery. This is my positive lead connected in here. My negative lead comes up and is connected right here. And I just have a zip tie holding these together, so it's kind of out of the way. Please resist the urge to try and connect cables into these posts. These are actually designed to clamp the cable to the battery post. So you can't actually attach cables there. If you try and put something underneath that nut, it's not going to work. I mean, it'll hold your cable on, but it's not going to clamp your battery. The way this works is as you tighten this nut down, there's sort of a camming action that pulls this close. And I'm not going to take it apart to show you, but just trust me, don't use these points for connecting in auxiliary wiring, please. That's all I ask. So as you can see, my cables are run together, another zip tie here, and they go around the power steering reservoir and then down back. It's kind of hard to see. The key here is you want to make sure you don't have any of these wires like resting against your radiator hoses or anything like that that's going to generate a lot of heat, you know, unnecessarily. So I'll show you how I have mine run up. Now obviously I have these inserts in my grill, so I can't just like show you back here. So I'm going to pull off the front of the grill just to show you how I have it run. And for those of you who aren't familiar with taking off your grill, it's pretty easy actually, and I'll go ahead and show you how, so that if you do find in your install taking the grill off helps you, then you'll at least have that knowledge. So there's really two things you need to do. One, you need to come in here and disconnect your blinker lights on each side. So there's this little red clip. On the passenger side, it's on the top. On the driver's side, it's actually the opposite. It's on the bottom. But this thing, you have to pull forward towards you, and it takes a little bit to get it pulled forward. But once you get it pulled forward, that will then allow you to squeeze this and just remove. Then on the top here, across the top of the grill, there's these little clips, and basically you just pry them up with a flathead screwdriver, and they'll come out like this. So if they come all the way out, like that happens a lot, don't worry about it. Just, you know, get the base out and then put it back together and you'll be fine. Anyway, once all those are out, this top piece is loose. And then if you look down here, there's a whole row of clips along the bottom. And then right by the blinker assembly, there is a clip right there. I don't know if you can see right where my finger's pointing, right there. And these will just pop out across the bottom, and that's it. It's pretty easy actually. And now you can see where I have my ground and power lines run. Again, a couple of zip ties just to keep everything tidy. Going up in through here and then popping out right here on this side of the power steering reservoir and then around. So anyway, that's how I chose to wire it. So if I did everything right, I should be able to plug in the controller cable, put this on wired remote control, and it works. And then of course this is the wireless version, so I can put this on wireless, turn on the remote, and let's feed some out. So I will say with the wireless remote, it does cycle a little bit longer than it does when you're using the wired remote. So just be cognizant of the fact that when you let go of the button, it might take a second before it stops. So there's kind of a delay. It almost starts immediately, but there's a little bit of a delay on the stop. So anyway, so there it is, all mounted, ready to go. Let's go find that cover. So everybody that has a Barricade synthetic winch should get a free cover. If you didn't get one, contact customer support and they will hook you up. Mine actually didn't come in the box with my winch. I had to call them and they sent me another one. But being that it's synthetic, this is the best way to protect your winch from ultraviolet damage. That's the Barricade 9500lb synthetic winch, and pretty happy with it. So now I need to go get stuck. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. You gotta admit, this looks pretty awesome.